Thursday night football's in the air, and sure, with a marquee matchup like Kenny Pickett versus Will Levis, we probably don't need gambling. We could just sit back and enjoy the ball. But no, of course, we got to do it today. We got to build some DraftKings lineups. And today, I'm going to prepare my lineups 3 different ways. First, we will hand build a lineup using all the advanced analytics that I look at from sites like Sports Info Solutions, Pro Football Reference, and a bunch more. Second, we're going to use some projections to optimize some lineups using Fantasy Cruncher. Find out where the math drives people to play players tonight. And last but not least, we'll simulate some lineups. And at the end of the video, I will give you guys 3 takeaways. I'm holding up 3 fingers entirely too much, but I'll give you guys 3 takeaways to build unique lineups for DraftKings tonight. Of course, $500,000 up top on that one. So let's get into it here. Shout out to the chat. As always, appreciate you guys being here. GMs, Squirt Squad assembling, GM ready to squirt. Thank you guys for being here always. Appreciate you being here and me starting a little bit late, but I had to actually dig in deep on this one. So full disclosure, shout out to the QB school. JT O'Sullivan, a name that you might not recall from the days of his football playing, has a great YouTube channel where he breaks down a lot of the players out there that we have questions about, a lot of the guys as well that are just crushing over the course of a year. So watch the full Will Levis breakdown before this video today. And I have to say, I kind of informed what I already thought about Will Levis was that he did a lot of things that I like. And what do we talk about? What do we talk about in the Spags rankings yesterday? What drives QB fantasy value? Deep throws, running. Will Levis did those 2 things. Wasn't as efficient as a runner as guys like Lamar Jackson, of course, Jalen Hurts, Anthony Richardson, rest in peace. All those guys, a lot better runners with what they did. Will Levis didn't even run once in the red zone, but he didn't have to because he was just slinging deep balls all over the place. The thing, though, with what Will Levis did was that was sort of plays that were not conventional, plays that also where he maybe could have done better things on it. The one ball he threw to DeAndre Hopkins where Hopkins kind of interfered, a little bit of OPI on that play. That was one where he was completely inaccurate on that throw. So you can argue that Will Levis, what he did, just the volition, the desire to throw deep balls is a thing that can add fantasy value. And I do believe that. That said, he probably wasn't actually good. So that's kind of a tough thing to unpack as how we talk about these things. That said, Will Levis, average air yards of 11.2. A lot of checkdowns in that game. The deep throws balance that out. He also did have, again, 7 throws of 20-plus air yards. That is a lot for any QB. That'd be the most in the league right now. Most that anybody's put up in one game this year besides Andy Dalton. So for a guy like Will Levis, these are positive signs for him. And I do think because of that, I don't consider him a must play. I don't consider him a, hey, don't fade this guy kind of guy. I do think that Will Levis is going to make the winning lineup tonight. So he is going to be in my flex position here in the hand build that we are putting into the huddle single entry on DraftKings right now. That is a great channel, says Justin. Yes, look, I think obviously the data is the most important thing to me. I think the data is the thing you should trust more than anything. But having guys break down film and trying to align that with what you are seeing data-wise is a very important part of the process. And I think in a perfect world, you marry this all together into one beautiful picture. But obviously, you got to trust people doing it. Backup QB, certainly willing to trust him. And I do think that O'Sullivan does a pretty good job on that channel from what I've seen. I've watched a handful of his videos in the past. And the Levis one I found pretty insightful. So full shout out to them, obviously. Not that they fucking need splash play to give them the bump, but maybe they do. I don't know. Other players that we should try to get to here. And one thing that stands out in this matchup, these are 2 defenses that are not very good at defending the pass. Tennessee on the year, one of the worst teams in the league, actually might be officially the worst team in the league. 0.36 EPA per dropback, 0.39 EPA per pass. Of course, EPA, expected points added. That means when you're giving up a little more, for giving teams getting the opportunity to score more points on a drive. That's what I look at for everything, because if you find outlier players there, they're going to produce on the field in ways that are going to add value to what you're doing fantasy-wise, of course. Is the channel in the description? No, of course it's not. I fucking watched the video before the show. Just search QB School. You'll find it. It's not that hard to find. It is a very popular channel. What's it in the description? What do you think? I prepare in advance? How dare you? I prepare the data. I don't prepare the descriptions. Tennessee, though, I think in this spot, low total for this one, 17.3 implied points. Pittsburgh, 19.8 implied points. It does seem like in this spot, like Vegas total's not supporting this at all. But these are matchups where both sides here, again, Pittsburgh's defense as well, 0.08 EPA per dropback, 0.09 EPA per dropback. Both teams also bad in the red zone defending the pass, 0.39 per red zone pass allowed by the Tennessee D, 0.09 EPA per red zone pass allowed by the Pittsburgh D. There should be pass game production here. So that is why I'm putting in Will Levis right away. Again, just think the floor, the passing upside, him being there. There's one thing, too, that O'Sullivan pointed out on QB School, which I thought was kind of interesting, too, talking about basically that there was one play where he threw it deep, in particular, where the obvious read, the first read was supposed to be a shorter throw. Will Levis's inclination is to try to get it deep. And that's something to me where if his inclination is to get the ball downfield, that's going to create upside for a showdown. So because of the low totals here, there's going to be a lot of teams playing defense, a lot of players out there rather playing the defenses. And that is something where even in good matchups, people are just cramming in defenses this year because the NFL scoring is down. Defenses keep making showdown winning lineups. I think the way to play this to get unique tonight is to not play the defenses, still play the kickers. I think that's going to be fine. But that's my initial instinct here is that if we play this like a shootout, if we play this like these two shitty pass game offenses can actually get production against two bad pass game defenses, I think we can actually get some unique lineups. So that's the Will Levis theory. That is why we're going to go with him first. And that is why also I do believe I would like to go to a wide receiver captain as well. Deontay Johnson is a player that I do not love, but his air yards have been up quite a bit this year. His overall usage has been up quite a bit this year. I think there are things for Deontay Johnson that are looking pretty good, including the fact he's a little bit cheaper than George Pickens. Now, last week, Deontay Johnson actually had some meaningful involvement in the game. Pickens did not. Deontay, 14 targets here. So for the box score watchers, he's probably going to come up pretty easily. Compared to a guy like Pickens, who we all know I'm very much in the bag for, but he does get meaningfully affected by a guy like Deontay being back in. 5 targets last week, did convert one of them into a nice 22-yard touchdown. That said, Pickens, I think the workload is not there for him to have a ton of faith in. And unfortunately for me, that means that our way to get unique here, or at least what we think is going to be unique right now, Deontay Johnson at captain. I don't love it, but I do think if we are going to play the pass games here, Deontay has the best pass game opportunity out of anybody besides DeAndre Hopkins. So in this spot, I'm going to go Deontay Johnson here. We'll see what we get out of that one. All right. Let's see who else we can get in here. So Kenny Pickett, you would think in a lineup with Deontay Johnson at captain, you should put in Kenny Pickett. I think that is a thing too, that historically a lot of people force that in when they're running their fantasy cruncher optimizers. For me, I'm going to shoot Kenny Pickett here. I think that putting him in, I don't know that he has the biggest upside. Obviously, if Deontay Johnson has an outlier day, one other pass catcher makes a winning lineup, Kenny Pickett can make it. But I think what's more likely to happen is Pickett has a hard time getting into there. He doesn't run enough. He doesn't get enough downfield production, doesn't score enough touchdowns to throw enough touchdowns. So to me, I think Deontay being captain with no Pickett is another way to get unique here with what we're trying to do. Other guys to look at. Let's see. Out of the mighty have fallen. Oh, poor Mr. Pittsburgh. Now we're seeing, I'm bashing Kenny Pickett. But yes, Deontay Johnson, there you go. That's the thing you could take pride in, Mr. Pittsburgh, is that Deontay Johnson, I think, looks pretty good today. That we'll see how chalky he is when we look at the ownership projections in a moment from Stochastic. All right, other players we can get in here. Derrick Henry, if we're getting the ball downfield, I think Derrick Henry punching one in also is a way that we see perhaps the Titans pass catcher not making a winning lineup. It's not as hospitable of a matchup against the run game for Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh on the year, a negative 0.05 EPA, which is actually about average, so it's not that bad, but definitely not the kind of matchup that you should expect Derrick Henry to have easy production. That said, let's put him in here. Obviously, we know he has touchdown equity. You know, there's some potential to get the ball downfield and not run as hot on touchdowns as the Titans did last week, so Derrick Henry will make it in. But it's going to be tough to afford him and Hopkins, huh? Hopkins 11-2, Henry 11-6. Boy, this is ugly. I might not be able to play both these guys. Ooh, can we go to Westbrook Akine? Hopkins was just so involved in that game, at least with the overall success that he had. Did only have 6 targets in that spot, right? If I'm remembering correctly, yeah, 6 targets, 4 catches. So maybe we can go Westbrook Akine instead and say that that's the way that Levis pays off, is he's running a little bit more. Henry still gets a touchdown in, and Westbrook Akine or Chig. What's the tight end matchup here? Tennessee, Pittsburgh actually very good versus tight ends. A negative 0.27 EPA against tight end passes, negative 0.4 EPA against running back passes. So that's interesting that Pittsburgh, not a good pass defense, but they do defend tight ends and running backs well. So that tells me that they're able to defend closer to the line of scrimmage a little bit better. A guy like Chig not getting downfield too successfully this year. So, okay. Yeah, I think Chig's an okay play again in terms of the usage that he had last week. But in this matchup, he might not actually be that great of a play. But did get 6 targets, got basically the same target workload as DeAndre Hopkins last week. Obviously, a lot less success. I'm going to go Westbrook Akine. He's cheap. We know he can get into the box and did have the nicest throw of Levis's day. So I think that looks okay for Westbrook Akine. Not the most exciting player in the world to play, but I'm willing to go there in this build. All right, so we have Deontay Johnson. I believe the Steelers can move the ball. I don't think they're going to be good in the red zone. So that kind of screams a kicker game here. Chris Boswell. Let's see. Has he had a 10-point game? All right, he's had 3 10-point games. You probably need 10 points to make a winning lineup for one of the kickers. You need to beat out a defense for sure. But we're saying in this game, the defenses are not going to be as effective as they might seem. Like they're going to be the people on the outside. So I think we're playing this the right way. Boswell will make it here as our kicker. And does Levis give a touchdown away? Is this going to be the way that we get a little more unique as we don't play a running back? We don't play Kenny Pickett. We have Deontay Johnson at captain. Can't afford Pickett anyway at this point. So let's play Steelers D. That's so expensive. $5,600 for a defense. Jesus Christ. I guess this is a helpful context from Kyle here. Are you a Levis slappy? No, I actually did not like Levis at all. Thought he was really going to be overdrafted. Ended up being, I think, appropriately drafted for what he represents in terms of the physical tools. But in college, he did not grade out well according to the metrics I look at. I did talk about like CJ Stroud, AR. Obviously, in hindsight, anybody's going to say this stuff. But those were guys who go back to the video I did in January, even just looking at the data for the first time. AR stood out. Stroud stood out. Young stood out as kind of a system QB. Levis stood out as a guy that just did not do anything well, besides running a little bit, throwing deep a little bit. So what I saw last week basically was like a huge surprise to me, which is why I wanted to kind of take some extra takes in to get somebody else's information to tell me what I should be seeing a little bit more, what I should be believing in a little bit more. All right. Steelers D, we're leaving 2,200 on the table. But you know what? I feel like this is the thing that happens a lot lately where you play the defense. It's a little more logical when you can play the cheaper one that leaves some salary on the table. So what if Titans D is the way that Pickett doesn't make the winning lineup? Maybe a fumble by a running back as well. Some sacks. Titans pressure rate on the year is not good. A 19% pressure rate compared to Pittsburgh getting 25%. So the Pittsburgh D is on its face a better play in terms of their ability to get home and actually create sacks and all of that. But I think for a tournament here, going to the cheaper D looks pretty good. So I will go with this lineup here. Final team. We'll see it load up on the screen. Deontay Johnson, Titans D, Chris Boswell, Derrick Henry, Will Levis, Nick Westbrook-Akine. So we are going with a 4-2 Titans build, which I do think will be a little bit more unique. We'll find out in a moment when we run the projections. But I think this makes sense for me where there's going to be an outlier pass catcher for Pittsburgh. I feel pretty confident in that. Obviously, I prefer it be Pickens, but I think for this kind of build and the usage we've seen, Deontay Johnson makes sense. We're also getting leverage against Kenny Pickett making the lineup by saying the Titans did something to fuck him up in this game here. That could be multiple sacks. That could be getting a defensive touchdown. Could be getting, obviously, an interception. There's a lot of ways it can run bad for Pittsburgh, despite the fact that this Tennessee defense is not very good. But I think, too, you can get away with trying to run some Pittsburgh alpha stacks, like really cramming in Pittsburgh having the best pass game success they've ever had, because this is the best matchup for them to have that success than they've ever faced. So I think that's sort of the logic I'm viewing the slate with so far. All right, stochastic projections. Let me make sure they're fully updated here. All right, good as of 7 hours ago. So top projected players according to Stochastic. Again, I think Stochastic data is a very important one to use for 2 reasons. One, I think it's the best data out there. Obviously, ETR, great site. Roto-Grinders does their stuff. I don't use their data, but I do personally for myself when I'm playing a slate, I combine Stochastic data with ETR data. That said, if you're just trying to get a pure read on the field, Stochastic data is a great way to do that because a lot of people out there use Stochastic projections either as their base for everything or as like a part of a merged projection. So keep that in mind. Nobody in this game projected for over 16 points. So there was really not anybody I think that's going to scream out as a play that gets jammed in a lot in an optimizer. But top projected player on the slate, Kenny Pickett. Again, great matchup for him. A nice price tag as well. Derrick Henry at number 2 with 11.6 price tag. So I think Pickett gets in a lot more lineups than Henry because of the projection and the price point at 9,200, which you can see here. Deontay Johnson at number 3. So a Deontay captain actually might be decently owned. I would think we're going to see when we run the optimizer now that looking at the projections, I think we'll see a lot of Deontay Johnson captain with Kenny Pickett in the flex. So maybe by just not putting Pickett in the flex, that's our way to get unique, which was the thesis anyway. George Pickens at number 4, $8,800 price tag, 13-point projection. And Will Levis, Stochastic, not high on Will Levis after 1 game. Again, a lot of bad traits that he showed in that game, a lot of bad traits he had in college, but a 12.8 projection for him here at a $9,600 salary. So that is how that is looking right now. And for some reason, he doesn't have a value metric, which I don't get what's going on there. Again, watch the projections throughout the day, of course. They might give a bump to Will Levis because that does feel kind of low for a guy who, again, threw deep 7 times, ran 7 times in a game. I think the rushing floor for Levis in particular is something I really need to point out before we move forward anymore, is basically that for Will Levis, because he's running 7 times a game, he just needs to break off, 20 yards in that. And that's enough to get him to closer to being able to make a winning line without doing a whole lot. So that's why, to me, I think Will Levis is a much stronger play than Kenny Pickett tonight, even though the matchup, again, for Pickett is the best one he's probably faced. But banged up Pickett, I kind of don't care as much. Top value plays in the slate. Darnell Washington. Darnell Washington, kind of interesting play because he's absolutely gotten passed up by Connor Hayward for the tight end snaps. Big grades out here, 2.2 fantasy points at $200. That'll be a guy that gets to an optimizer, I presume, to some amount. Last week, Darnell Washington only played 10 snaps. Connor Hayward up to 49 snaps. So pretty big discrepancy there between Hayward and Darnell Washington. But Washington, a big-bodied guy, can certainly get you one touchdown. Chris Moore, I guess kind of a lever against Westbrook-Akine. Moore last week played 28 snaps on the year, 27.7. Not getting a lot of targets, just 1.3 per game. But still, that amount of snaps is the main thing to look for on a showdown slate. Just guys who are going to be out on the field, going to help you out a lot. Kyle Phillips, Anthony McFarland, Miles Boykin. I'm going to throw up. There we go. And you all know Chris only had eyes for one rookie QB. That is true. There was only one love of my life, and I'll never forget him. Just love you, AR. If you missed the AR days, boy, you missed out on a lot of fun, guys. I don't know what to tell you. If you missed the AR days, all the people that joined in fantasy football in week 5, they really missed out. All right. Showdown ownership projections. And again, these will move around throughout the course of the day, so keep that in mind. Kenny Pickett, again, top projected play. He's a top value. That makes sense. A highest owned guy here, 60.5%, 12.2% at captain. You better be fucking careful. If you were playing Kenny Pickett at captain, you load him up with at least 2 pass catchers, if not 3, because it is very unlikely he can actually make captain. Salary makes it easier if you're jamming in studs, but I think Pickett is captain. If he's going to be that highly owned, I do not think that's the strongest play in the world. Deontay Johnson, projected for 54.9% ownership overall, 12% in captain rounded up. Derrick Henry, 53.4% ownership overall, 12% in captain, so a little bit less than Pickett. 49.4% ownership for Pickens, 11% ownership expected to go his way. So does seem like stochastic things that people will try to pick on this Titans pass D matchup. And then Will Levis. Will Levis at 6% ownership for a captain. This guy, man, I don't believe in it. I don't like to answer the question in the thumbnail. There's some things he did well. There's some things I find appealing. If he were another guy, I might be able to talk myself into it a little more. But like, if the ownership is going to be 6%, I think he's kind of interesting because he can get there with the rushing and just 1 or 2 deep touchdowns. Levis kind of interesting at 6%. I think that's actually a nice play to get to. Other guys here, Hopkins under 10%, Najee Harris under 10%. No surprises there. Really low owned guys you could get to if you want to really decrease your ownership product. Kyle Phillips. Kyle Phillips last week played 18 snaps, 19.3 snaps per game on the year. Kyle Phillips, not a high priority guy, certainly can get in the box. So that's, I guess, makes some amount of sense. Darnell Washington, 5% owned. Again, he's got to get a touchdown for him to pay off. But he's $200. So I think you can target that. Washington on the year, though, does not have a red zone target. So kind of the hope for him is that he could be that kind of player. But he's not being used that way so far this year. Josh Wiley was basically not involved last week. I think got taken out of the rotation for Trayvon Wesco. Trayvon Wesco, though, when he plays snaps, he's just in as a blocker. Barely runs routes. Wesco is on the year, run 2.7 routes per game, despite playing 40 snaps last week. So Wesco is a guy that is live to get a touchdown in this game, but is not live to run a lot of routes to do that. So Wesco can hit, but you have to really thread a very tight needle to get there. All right, let's run the optimizer here. And again, what this part of the process shows us is not really about exactly what the field's going to play, but it does tell you what the math is going to drive people towards, which is a very important part of a slate. Because basically, sometimes people will end up very chalky, very highly owned on a player just because of the fact that like the projections push you there and you don't even realize like, oh shit, I have 70% Chris Moore. It's just because of the fact the projections make it work out that way. So that's what we're going to try to find out here when we run this optimizer here. Of course, Fantasy Cruncher, the best optimizer in the biz. Maybe there's others that are good. I don't know. But I've always used Fantasy Cruncher. A lot of the pros do. So there you go. Not that I'm lumping myself in with them. Top owned players here. Pickens in 80% of lineups. Not in 20% of captain. So Pickens is not in every lineup. Pickett, 48% in captain. 52% Kenny Pickett. Made every lineup according to just the pure math here. Deontay Johnson, 68% at utility. Okay, so Pickett and Deontay Johnson made every lineup. If you guys are veterans of these showdown videos, what does that mean? If you separate out Kenny Pickett and Deontay Johnson right away, just don't play them together in any lineups. That is what you could do and get different right away. So wanting to keep in mind here, again, high pass game matchup or high potential pass game matchup for Kenny Pickett. Deontay Johnson putting up the game he did last week. I think there's nothing here that makes me think the casuals won't go that way as well. So I would imagine there's going to be a lot of Deontay Johnson to Pickett tonight. So if you're playing 5 lineups, I would just play either one of Deontay Johnson or Kenny Pickett. Obviously, they can both hit, but that's your way to kind of cut the ownership pool right away and have yourself competing against 40% of people as opposed to 60%, if not 70%. Other players here coming up a lot. Connor Hayward coming up a lot, 60%. Salary in this one is 2,800, so that makes sense. Again, he had 49 snaps last week. It's a lot of work for Connor Hayward as a guy that basically is, I think, barely an actual tight end. He's more of an H-back, but he's out there playing quite a bit. Team stacks. Actually, let me make sure there's nobody else. Yeah, nobody else in 100% of lineups. Levis not 100%. Hayward not 100%. So it is just literally Pickett and Deontay Johnson. Team stacks here. We're getting, 14 out of 25 lineups are 5-1s for Pittsburgh. So we are getting onslaughts of Pittsburgh as a numerical thing, which means that 5-1s for Pittsburgh will probably be a little bit overowned, especially given that this is a 2-point spread. I have it on the screen, but 2.5-point spread. You should not be getting that many 5-1s. I don't hate 5-1s. I normally like 5-1s a lot, but when you just get pushed there on a pure projection basis, that normally means the 5-1's going to be a little bit overrepresented, which kind of kills the value of what an onslaught means. So I'm not crazy about 5-1s, but the math does support them here, just the projections. 4-2s. We're getting 4-2s for Pittsburgh, no 4-2s for the Titans. So that bodes well for my hand build. And then not a lot of 3-3s. Again, this doesn't mean that nobody's going to play 3-3s. It doesn't mean that nobody's going to play 4-2 Titans, but it does mean that just the projections, which are going to be pretty similar anywhere you go, are not going to push people towards those kind of builds. So I think that is an important thing to note right away. Another thing that seems important to note, by the way, as well, I mean, you can see this is going to be a lineup here, top projected one. This is one you could theoretically play in cash. Will Levis coming up unstacked a lot in these builds. 5-1s with Will Levis, which I think a 5-1, if you were to play it, I would play 5-1 with a DeAndre Hopkins, with a Westbrook-Akine, with a Chig. I think that is going to be the move to play if you are going to do the 5-1 favoring the Steelers, because Will Levis comes up very easily in all of these. And that's another thing where I imagine that it's just not going to be as beneficial overall, even though Levis does run enough where you can kind of make sense of it a little bit more. Shouts to our guy Jason in the chat, OG Mans fan. Spags, my man, finally getting caught back up. TNF, yes. What can make life more fun than a TNF slate with Will Levis and Kenny Pickett? All right, let's run the Sims now. I think we've covered everything. Actually, real fast, kickers and defenses. Let me make sure where they're coming up. 44% Steelers D, not any Titans D. So again, I think we made the right choice with that hand build that we did for the huddle, at least to get the low ownership. And Chris Boswell, Nick Folk, these guys should be more involved again, given that these are offenses that should be able to move the ball, but probably not good enough to really punch in every touchdown. I think Boswell and Folk a little underrepresented based on the projections. All right, simulator, let's do it. I did not run this in advance today, so my apologies. We're going to do it live here on the show. But of course, this is the full process you would see if you were a Stochastic member doing their Sims. Of course, a lot of great Sims out there, great sides of Sims on all parts of things. The Solver has one. Saber Sim I've played with as well. I think they do a good job too. Roto Grinders rolled out a one that's free right now. If you want to just dabble in the Sim world without actually paying for anything, you could do that. Use whatever Sims you want, but I do think they are an important part of the process, and it's certainly one of mine. While we are waiting for this to load, it should load pretty fast. But guys, I do these videos every Monday and Thursday. And of course, Splash Play goes on 11 a.m. every day, Monday to Friday. I am here giving out football takes. Do a similar process for the main slate tomorrow, the Fantasy Football Gauntlet. So please come out, hang out here on Splash Play on our March to 3K subs. And Lord knows, one day we are actually going to get there. And of course, go check out Probably as well, my baby. If you want to get in good apps, you can do it for free at Probly.com. We calculate top probabilities, the top data from the winningest sportsbooks around the world to find the best sportsbook opportunities for you. So great for a night like tonight where you just want to get some action in. Go check it out at Probably.com. That is that is literally my thing. This is not an ad. This is my thing that I need you guys to fucking sign up for and get on board. All right, let's simulate the lineups here. The prize pool for tonight, I have to presume, is going to be 30% to first, but let's just make sure. All right, 500K. Yeah, 33% to first, so we'll make sure to put that in as the thing. If you want to do your own custom projections, you can do that right here. You would download the template and then match them up to whatever you're doing. We'll run the Sims right now. Any questions as well, feel free to drop in the chat. Always happy to answer anything. QB play in the NFL today is at an all-time low. I've never seen it this bad. I don't think that's true. I think it's more the defenses adapting to just eliminate a lot of the things that have been successful over the last 5 years. That's my biggest takeaway, has been that defense is like, you see so much cover 2 now. You see so many prevent based things. Like, it's just all designed to limit QB upside. And frankly, I don't know it's going to happen this year. I would love to see rule changes again. I know defenses are so tired of the rule changes that keep, targeting them. Like, I want fun games. And I think right now we are being trapped in a world of not fun games because the coordinators getting sharper. And I don't think it's the QBs. Like, a guy like Will Levis comes in, throws it deep so frequently. Like, guys want to play fun football, but they're just kind of not allowed to because of what the schemes are they're going against. All right. Top ROI lineup is going to be this one right here. 352% ROI. Kenny Pickett, Allen Robinson, Chris Boswell, Derrick Henry, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. What did Robinson run last week? Robinson, I feel like, has not done much to provide a spike week. 49 snaps on the year, 46 snaps last week, 28 routes per game. All right, Allen Robinson, I guess I get it. Not the sexiest play, but in Showdown, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't love your lineups in Showdowns because you just want unique lineups to give you a chance to actually get first place, either solo or duped by 5 or less people. So playing an Allen Robinson, I get it. Top cash game lineup, according to the Sims, would be this one. Kenny Pickett at captain, Connor Hayward, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Jalen Warren, Will Levis. Not only, I think, a functional cash game lineup, but one where this is really what you have to play if you're going to play Pickett at captain. You need to really overload his pass catchers here because Kenny Pickett is not going to get there by running a lot. Like, he can run, but he's banged up. I don't expect him to run a ton today. But also, like, you really need all of the pass catchers to make it and not do enough to beat out Kenny Pickett. So this is the kind of build where if you play Pickett at captain, obviously don't play this one. It's going to be duped a shitload. But for a cash game, this is the kind of lineup you want to get to a lot. All right. Overall exposures, if we look at the top 150 lineups, most exposure going to Steelers D, which was coming up a lot. So it does feel like the Sims are saying that Steelers D is a good play, even though they are coming up a lot naturally. So something to keep in mind there. That also does make it, by the way, mean that Titans D going to get you really good leverage on a highly owned Steelers D because it is very unlikely that both defenses actually make a winning lineup. It can happen, obviously, but it is unlikely. Kenny Pickett, 47% in the flex. Pickens, 46% in the flex. These guys coming up a lot. Pickens also getting positive leverage here, so they want you to get more than the field's 38% ownership. Top owned captains, looking like a lot of exposure for Pickett captain. I do not agree with that. I think the only reason that makes sense is to jam in a lot of the stud plays. But if you're jamming in the stud plays, you're not getting what Pickett really means at captain, which is the way that he becomes a winning captain is that either every stud gets in there, like you max out the salary. Pickett at captain allows you to get in Hopkins, Henry, Deontay Johnson, whatever. But in reality, the way that Pickett has the upside to win and to be there at captain in a winning lineup is that he's throwing 4 touchdowns this game and maybe running for 1. And that means you have to have the pass catchers with him. So I don't, Sims for Sims. I don't like disagreeing with the Sims because the data is the data. But that said, I think this is a lot of Pickett, and I just don't agree. I don't agree with how it was building that. I think this is going to be a mistake if people play this much Pickett and don't play it the right way with him having a lot of pass catchers with him in the flex. Spags, do you have any historical data on showdowns and totals under 40? Just curious if anything stands out. No, I do not, but I am sure that ETR will have it in their article today with Cody Main, so I would check that out. But no, it's not something I track. Obviously, the expectations that defenses and kickers make it a little bit more. The issue is that people play the defenses and kickers then too much because of a low total game. So for the game theory of showdowns, like, I would try to play outlier outcomes that are not exactly what the field's expecting. So that means like playing Titans D if you want to play that way, playing Chris Boswell and whoever the Titans kicker is that I don't know offhand. Play those guys. That's how you play a low scoring version of this. That's going to be a little bit less owned. But if you're just playing like, I don't know, Steelers D, you're going to be with a lot of people. Sims say it's a good play. What are we going to do? All right. Anything else to note here? Weird captains to go to. Any guys that I would really find interesting to go to as a low-owned captain? God, in this slate, like, what do we even, like, what's a low-owned captain really? Like Najee, lineup starts with Najee Harris. Let's look at a Najee Harris captain lineup. Why not? Najee Harris. Najee Harris at captain, Derrick Henry, Deontay Johnson, Pickens, Steelers, and Titans. This is kind of a logical build. Basically, the logic behind this one would be that probably not a lot of pass game production, so you are fading what the matchup is. But I think people will know this is a theoretically positive pass game matchup. So this actually does make some sense to go to a Najee captain lineup. Like, not really in terms of how Najee plays, but like the theoretical parts of Najee captain I could get with. And this kind of lineup as well, where you have one pass or 2 pass catchers, but no QBs. Like, I think this is going to be pretty low owned tonight. Let's look at a Jalen Warren captain just for funsies. Jalen Warren at captain. I don't think he actually can get there as captain, but it would be a fun way to play the pass game. It's going to be less owned. Warren at captain, Derrick Henry, Kenny Pickett, Titans, Tyjae Spears, Will Levis. Not the sexiest build overall. Any other unique captains that are actually worth it? Any low-owned ones? Let me just go through the ownership here. Levis, Jalen Warren. Chig. Really tough matchup for Chig, but let's see what a Chig captain looks like. Jig, Derrick Henry, Pickett, Najee Harris, Steelers, Will Levis. Don't hate it. Don't love Pickett without a receiver. I'd rather have a receiver without Pickett. Is there one without? Man, I like, you could make a case to me to just not play Pickett tonight. Like, I think Pickett coming up everywhere. Like, I'm willing to fade Pickett being the driving force. And then you have an out too with Pickett. Like, Pickett can get hurt again and Trubisky can come in. I would be really scared to play this much Pickett as it's kind of being jammed in here. This build here, Chig at captain, Connor Hayward, DeAndre Hopkins, Derrick Henry, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. I like that one more because it says there's pass game production, but you're not tying it to Pickett. Though obviously if these two guys get there along with Hayward, that does mean you're a little bit more likely to see Pickett make that winning lineup. Yeah, not the most fun. Anything else to point out here? And just to quickly highlight, and again, like, you can play these lineups straight away. If you are playing just a straight sim lineup, try to find at least some salary on the table. Like this one with Pickett at captain, like 47.8 is a salary. Excuse me, that looks pretty good. Pickett, Connor Hayward, George Pickens, Najee Harris, Steelers D, Will Levis. You're basically playing a Steelers boat race where Will Levis just enough to make a winning lineup. I think that makes sense. All right, let's do the 3 takeaways here. We got to do it. 3 takeaways. Number one to me right away, separate Deontay Johnson and Pickett. I think the way you win money tonight, or the way you get different from a lot of the field and give yourself a good shot to win money tonight, is going to be to play the least chalky outcome. The chalkiest outcome is going to be people are going to have a lot of Deontay Johnson with Pickett together. So I think make sure you are getting some amount of lineups in where you just play one of Deontay Johnson and Kenny Pickett. That is the thing I would recommend. If I were myself putting in 5 lineups, I'll be putting in 30 in the Millie Maker tonight, along with my usual smattering of tournaments. And I think for me, like, I will make sure that at least probably 5 to 10 of those 30 lineups have at least only one, rather, of Deontay Johnson or Kenny Pickett. Number 2 would be play some more kickers. The kicker's not coming up pretty easily here, and it is a low total game, but one where I do expect it, where the offenses should be able to move the ball. I expect also there to be some red zone stalling out. These are not good offenses. And where offenses that are bad have the biggest issues, like we've seen before, the Raiders being a good example recently, is just like they can't get the ball downfield. They can't get the ball when it gets, especially in tight spaces, just can't get what they want out of it. So I think for both teams really tonight, like, I expect them to struggle in the red zone if that's the case. These are not also very aggressive teams, so field goal kicker should be in play. Really no preference. I would guess a little more Boswell for me, but I think both kickers should be strongly in play tonight. And then third takeaway to get unique in this kind of slate as well, I think just like not playing Kenny Pickett. Like, I know that kind of ties with point 1. Kenny Pickett's way too overowned in this slate. I get it. Again, the matchup early does benefit Kenny Pickett, but like a hurt guy who we know does not have the highest floor, who also can throw picks, can also, like, he's got, what's his interception rate on the year? Only a 2% interception rate. Does see pressure on 40% of snaps, though. Like, he could definitely take some sacks here, and he could also leave the game with an injury. So that's like a lot of risk points for a guy in Kenny Pickett that I don't even think has he broken 20 fantasy points this year? Like, I doubt it. Let me just look really quickly. And I know that because of my best ball shares. I don't think Pickett has broken 20 fantasy points this year, and yet people are going to be cramming him in at captain, an injured guy who potentially hasn't broken 20 fantasy points. Yeah, no games over 20. No games over 16, I guess, besides this one against Vegas. So maybe he can get you 18.5. I just don't think that's a winning captain. So yeah, to me, it's like, just don't play as much Pickett as the field. Like, I don't like making takes like that, but this is too much fucking Pickett for a guy who's not that good. So that's what we're going to do here. Shout out to the chat as always. Appreciate guys. Tyler coming in here, one of the leaders of the Squirt Squad. Appreciate you guys being here. Of course, make sure to hit that join button down below if you want to get all the access to my data, the data that I look at for the main slate. You'll get that on Saturday morning if you hit that join button down below for $4.99 a month. And also you get to support this channel, which, as you can tell here, nobody puts more love and handcrafted effort into every video here as I do on Splash Play. So please do that. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at Splash Play Pod. Appreciate all you guys being here. Mr. Shadow Dog wants me to do NBA. I'm not doing NBA. I don't know what to tell you. But appreciate all you guys being here as always. And again, come back tomorrow. Fantasy Football Gauntlet. This same process for the main slate. I will see you guys then. Enjoy your days. And of course, good luck to you all. If I don't take this down, I hope you do. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.